bring it back.
Yeah, doesn't.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right. So moving on to the transport chapter revisions.
I'll hand over to Phil Clearwater. Do you want to come and sit up here, or do you want to share from there? Can you? All right.
Speaker on.
Just
It might be better if you come up here. Yeah.
in the overheads that were just given to you before we started this meeting, this one with the blue stripes on it, you'll see that there is a page there, revisions to transport chapter on page 3, and that simplifies the issues that David will be talking about today. Oh, and I'd just like to introduce Richard Osborne, Unit Manager Transport and Research.
Welcome, Richard.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
All right. So what you should have in front of you is the there's a couple pages sort of outlining the issues in more detail, and in a table format. There's also the latest version of the chapter, of the transport chapter, and then of the slide. The transport chapter. So I'll just take you through the slide.
So before you do, can I just check, does everybody have those 3 pieces?
I just want to make
information?
sure too, because I don't think I have one. But I've written what it is. There's 2 separate pages of the summary.
Yes. Yep.
Does everybody else have them? Yes. It's headed up, David. It's headed up.
Summary of the Earthquake Recovery Committee, the whole.
Wait till I get the stuff together.
So this is headed comments on the transport chapter.
Yes.
Has everyone got one or can look on with a neighbour?
There are some extras if you don't. Okay, thank you.
All right. So I'll just take you through what's on the slide, which is just highlights the changes that we've made to the chapter for your consideration. So first of all, the road classification, or the road hierarchy, as some people call it. There was a request last time, I think, by Councillor East, who just left the room, that Mariehow Road between Burwood and Marshlands Road be changed to from a collector road to a minor arterial road, so it will have a increase in status. And we've looked at that further, and we've decided that that is appropriate considering the amount of subdivisions that are in that area, especially the Preston subdivision. The increase in traffic in that area will probably warrant a higher status of that road in the future. So we have made that change. That was the first one. I can run through these, or if you want to comment, if we keep going. Sure. Okay. So the second change was a change to one of the definitions that was requested when the definitions chapter was brought to you last month, I think it was. And it's the definition of accessibility, which is only really used in the transport chapter, so that's why I'm bringing it to you today. There was a suggestion that the word acceptable and the word money be changed to reasonable and to cost. So it will now read, the ability for all people, including people with disabilities, to reach a location or service within a reasonable amount of time, cost and effort. So we've made that change as per the last, the comments at the last session on that. All right, so moving on to the third point. We've had some further comments received in the last month since we last brought the transport chapter to you, and based on those we've made some changes to the objectives and policies. So that's on pages 3, 4 and 5 of the
Now in the big document?
Of the big document.
Yep.
Draft chapter. So you'll see in orange some of the changes we've made to recognise Ngāi Tahu values more than what we had recognised them previously. And we've also streamlined a lot of the objectives and policies so that they're a lot more succinct and concise than what you saw back in April. So, but the same direction is the same. It's just sort of wordsmithing to make it more clear exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah, just two questions. One is, can you just tell me what Ngāi Tahu mana whenua values are, what that actually means in practice, and also in terms of the accessible car parks, is there any way we can, through this plan, require them to be painted blue rather than yellow? I know that that's one issue in the disability sector that is problematic, that yellow ones tend to get ignored, blue ones tend to get noticed. I don't know whether we do that through here or some other mechanism. So two questions. Okay. Mana whenua Ngāi Tahu values, what does it actually mean in practice? What are they and how does it relate to transport? And second one, can we make that really simple change from yellow to blue?
Sure. The first question, the mana whenua values, so there will be a definition for Ngāi Tahu mana whenua values it's been put into the definition chapter that is coming to you on Thursday.
It's also the values that are pronounced in the iwi management plan, which we have to have regard to in the Resource Management Act, and obviously we wouldn't want to list them all here. That's quite a large document.
Can you put your microphone on, Yanni, please? I can't hear you.
What, someone applying for a resource consent, what does this actually mean in terms of what factors we take into account?
Sure. So as Bridget mentioned, the iwi management plan is quite a large document. It's got a lot of different policies. So there are a number of different values you could include. But what we've done on page 6 and policy 8 is we've listed 3 values that could be used in a transport context to recognise Ngāi Tahu values more, and that's around use of Indigenous planting, stormwater management, and the protection of Waitapu and Waitonga. So those are 3 examples that people can use, but the iwi management plan has a whole list of other values that people can recognise. And the second question, yes, we could consider that. I'll have to check what the regulations are around that and whether it is appropriate to go on the district plan or whether it would have to be a change to a bylaw or maybe it's national national regulation. But we have got requirements for disabled car parks and how wide they must be. We haven't got any requirements about the colour of them, I'm not sure which legislation requires a certain colour or not, but we might need to check that just to check whether that can go on the district plan or whether it needs to be changed to some other building act.
So you'll bring that back to us?
So yeah, I can get back
Thank you.
At this time.
Can if we wanted to.
Any more questions on objectives and policies?
Where did we get to with the whole integration of big community space? Commercial space. Where commercial space becomes overwhelming, that it starts to impact on the traffic network, public transport, active transport. Where did we kind of end up with that?
Yeah, so that's covered by ITA's which is called integrated transport assessments, which I've got in point 6 at the bottom of the table, so I can come to that when I talk about that. Yep. Okay.
We're through with objectives and policies, then, are we?
Yep.
And well, the final question I had then on that is there anything that recognises that traffic lights are not the solution? Like, how do we deal with this issue of the current thinking that the only solution is a traffic light, and if you put a traffic light in, So in terms of our objectives and policies, is there anything there about doing some sort of assessment over, the cumulative effects of the traffic network from a city point of view, rather than just a very localised?
Yeah, so we have got objectives. So objective 1 on page 3, for example, under I, it talks about transport system that is accessible, affordable, resilient, safe, sustainable and efficient. Under efficient, that's something we can consider whether traffic lights in that situation will be more efficient or not.
It's just that 2 seems to cancel that one out. So
Yeah, it's always going to be a balancing act. In some cases, traffic signals may actually make the network more efficient, and in some cases it won't. So it's probably going to be a case by case.
do we need like an objective that says you cannot have more than 5 sets of traffic lights within a kilometre, or 3 within 3 blocks is too much? Or I mean, do we need to be really blunt about this?
Well, it's going to be on a case by case basis.
But do you understand that's the issue? Everything gets assessed by a case basis.
Yes.
So if you go down Lincoln Road at the moment, ask yourself, are those traffic lights enhancing our traffic network? Probably not. The ones we're seeing going up in a number of places are good for the local development, but they're really bad for our traffic network.
Yeah. So we have made it quite clear that there's the strategic network, and that's what the road hierarchy is really about. It lists the key roads that we want to protect, and Lincoln Road is one of those arterial roads. So it's very much those key roads we want to try and keep efficient as possible. But we've always got to balance how many people we're trying to access onto a road, and how many people are going obviously along a road and through a road, and whether the traffic signals give more benefit to the people coming onto the road that outweighs the disbenefit to the people travelling along the road. So we've always got to balance that up, and it's going to depend on how many people are accessing the road as to whether traffic signals are needed in that case. If we said no to traffic signals, what would happen is you'd have obviously people queuing to get onto the road at all the access points. So,
And Riccarton Roundabout is a classic example.
Yeah.
Well, you might have actually less development because the infrastructure, the roading network can't actually cope with it. Like people could actually, instead of making, millions and millions of dollars off the development, they might make a few million rather than 10 million because they do a lesser size because the traffic infrastructure can't cope.
Does anyone want to comment on that? Because it just seems, I'm not sure how you define that, or are you able to define that within the plan?
I think through you, Mr. Chair, I think you'd be struggling to put something in there which is as blunt as what the council is looking for, which kind of suggests that you should have X number of traffic lights per road there, because what we're looking for is the efficient, for some of them like Lincoln Road, you're right, we're looking for the efficient through movement of vehicles, but something like traffic lights in specific locations might be the best approach, but it'd be very difficult in here to be that specific that you could only say you have X number per kilometre or whatever else, because that might actually be the best approach. So I think that the issue is teased out when you look at the overall flavour of the objectives and policies, which are sinking in terms of the road hierarchy, which seeks the efficient through movement of vehicles. And that's where it needs to be decided at that sort of level. But I think it would be problematic for us in terms of, and council as the road controlling authority, if you had something which specifically stated X number per kilometre. I think that might come back to bite us.
Yeah. So you're really saying we can't really define it any further or specify it any further than what we have?
I don't think so, no.
No, and correct me, Richard, if I'm wrong, but when they're looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of putting yet another set of traffic lights, and the cumulative effect across that road would be considered as a part of that equation.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing we're trying to get across through these integrated transport assessments. And I know that's an issue David's going to get onto at the moment, but it's all about not just looking at the development per se, it's looking at the wider area, and that's probably one of the things we haven't done that well in the past, councillor, is look at the wider area and the cumulative effects, but that's the whole reason why we're trying to get ITAs introduced, is so we can do that.
Really what I'm talking about is giving sufficient weight to that cumulative effect,
Yeah.
so that you can actually say to a development, actually, sorry, the cumulative effect is just too great, so you have to downsize.
I think that the ITAs are the best tool in the toolbox for doing that, and best practice throughout the country. That's what Auckland and Hamilton have introduced. That's what the New Zealand Transport Agency recommends us to put in, and that's what we've developed guidelines for. I think that's what David's about to get onto now.
Yep.
Do you want to move, this next one I've got is university parking, or do you want to move on? What are you moving on to, David?
We can move on to the integrated transport assessments if that's the topic at the
Okay.
moment. Yep.